Welcome home. I'm Dr. Thema, a minister, licensed psychologist, and sacred artist, and this is Homecoming, a podcast to facilitate your journey home to yourself. While I will provide weekly inspiration and mental health tips, this podcast is not a substitute for therapy. I'm so excited you're on the journey. If you want to request specific topics or share your progress, email me at homecomingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, after you listen, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin. I'm so glad you are with us for another episode of the Homecoming Podcast. And I am excited about today's topic. It actually was a request from one of our co-journers about coping with alcoholism and other forms of addiction, which are particularly significant while we are in the midst of the coronavirus. And I'm excited to introduce to you all one of my special beloved sisters, Reverend Dr. Rosalynn Brookins. She is a pastor in Oakland, the heart of Oakland, where they do ministry both to the spirit, but also to the heart and mind and the material needs of the community. She has an expertise, her doctorate in liberation theology with a focus on the experiences of women and also the gift of the prophetic. When she lived in Los Angeles, she taught a class on the prophetic that I was blessed to attend, and it was amazing. And I'm excited for her to be willing to share her journey and her insight with us today. And so, Reverend Dr. Rosalynn Brookins, welcome to Homecoming.
Thank you, Dr. Thema. It is such a wonderful opportunity. I thank you for inviting me to be here this morning.
Oh, absolutely. And I know that in the midst of this pandemic, many people are struggling. And as we struggle, we often reach to things or to people to medicate our pain or to distract us. And so this issue of substance dependence and addiction is so, so important. Can you first help us, Reverend Roz, to know the difference between someone being a casual user or casual drinker and how they would know that it is becoming a problem in terms of addiction or dependence?
Yes. In simple terms, Dr. Thema, it is when you can't go without having a drink, regardless to how destructive the behavior may be. There are two forms, if I may say, two forms of knowing if you are out of control and need some help, if you are a casual drinker or really an alcoholic, is there sometimes we can take a drink and put it down. That's a casual drinker. I don't have a need for it. I'm just being sociable. And then there's another person, such as myself, is I take a drink and I keep drinking, and I keep drinking and I keep drinking, right?
Yes.
And so that's the simple term or the simple description of how you know or would not know that there's a potential problem.
Yeah, so it's one of the important things for us to be aware of in terms of the frequency of the drinking, and then thinking about within yourself if you've ever wondered if this is an issue or if people who care about you have raised the concern. We want to be mindful about that. And so I know one of the ways that we learn best is through experience. And so I am grateful that you're willing to share your journey with us. And if you can let us know what led you to alcoholism, what do you feel in your life set you up in some ways for the addiction?
Well, let me say, before I answer that question, Dr. Thema, let me just say, you can either be a chronic alcoholic or a functional alcoholic. And for me, I started like most people as being a functional alcoholic. What does that mean? That means I can have an everyday life. I'm able to get up, go to work, but not without having my substance. So for me, I drank every day. I went to school every day. I completed my assignments, but I was drunk all of the time in doing so. So I was a functional alcoholic. Chronic alcoholic is one who is unable to function at all. And sometimes we see people who can function during the week, but during the weekends, on the weekends, they just can't do anything, right? I started drinking at the age of 14. I saw my father drink. I came from a very abusive background. I was molested at an early age, and I saw as a way of escape, as a way out, my father drank, his father drank, so I also began to drink. I was 14 years old, and I remember going into the refrigerator and seeing a glass filled with what I thought was water was actually gin. And so I took a drink of it thinking it was water, but it also, in doing so, I felt this inner silence. It felt like the demons that were inside of me were silenced. And the more I took a drink, the quieter they became. And so at 14, because of all of the abuse I had experienced, because of I myself had been molested at a very early age. It was an easy way to escape the pain. It was an easy way to silence the voices in my head. And so for me, I started early, and people who start drinking early, the likelihood of you becoming an alcoholic later in life, statistics show that there's a strong possibility. And I enjoyed drinking. I have to tell you, I had more power drinking than I ever thought I could ever have sober.
Tell us more about that. When you say more power, what do you mean?
Well, when I would take a drink, I could speak my mind, as to say. I could tell you off and then make an excuse that, it was because I had been drinking. I really didn't mean that. When in fact I did mean it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I wasn't as fearful when I took a drink because it gave me the ability to say and do what I wanted to say and what I wanted to do. So
yes.
At 14, I started drinking, Dr. Thema, but by the time I was 18, I was a full-blown alcoholic at 18, but I was still able, going back to being functional, that's another part of the power. I could drink and still do what most people could do. Go to school, show up, graduate, and yet go undetected. But I could go to school, go to class, be in class, and graduate, and was undetected as an alcoholic because I was functional.
Yeah. And I appreciate you naming what you got out of it, because I think it's so important for parents or mental health professionals or loved ones to not just, if they only focus on the negative, they will miss the pull, both the physical pull and also the psychological pull of what people are getting from their use, right? So naming that it would numb the pain, but then also give you a sense of power or freedom. Can you also speak to the cost? What did it cost you then, and the long-term costs?
Oh my goodness. That's such a powerful question because you don't really realize, Dr. Thema, what the cost is while you're in it. It wasn't until I needed to be sober that I realized it was a major cost. And so one of the things that I can tell you for sure is that it cost me the inability to make healthy choices. Because I started early, my drinking habit started early in life. I was unable to make healthy choices as it in regards to relationships. It I look for love in all the wrong faces and all the wrong places. It cost me my safety. I shared with you that I had been molested at an early age and gang raped at 13, again at 17. And so I didn't know how to have a healthy relationship without my body being used as the tool. You know, so that, and then my inability to trust myself and to trust other people. And to be honest with you, Dr. Thema, even 30 years later, after I'm sober, have done some great things by the grace of God, I still find myself questioning my own ability to trust people and to trust myself to make healthy decisions.
And is the loss of trust in people as a result of the assaults or other components?
I think it's a combination of both. It's the combination of the assaults, but also in my use of alcoholism and drugs. You don't know, you numb out, you're numb to people and to their needs as well, and because I used alcoholism and drugs to get through life and to escape at the same time, to escape from life and to get through life. I sometimes don't know if my decision that I'm making today is a healthy decision. And that for me is where accountability partners come in.
Well, that's a great segue, because I was going to ask, how did you make the transition into sober living, and what either inspired or provoked you to make that shift?
To be honest with you, I didn't want to be sober. I was not really trying to be sober. I was really trying to drink martinis like I saw on television, the way I saw white women on television, like Elizabeth Taylor and Marilyn Monroe. They didn't show them having a drinking problem or a drug problem. They showed them sipping out of martini glasses. And we know that Marilyn Monroe died of an overdose, but that was not ever televised, as when they showed Diana Ross in Woman Sings the Blues. She was completely out of her mind,
So you were initially trying to switch to moderation?
Yes, I think that's a great way of putting it. When I went into rehab, I went into rehab because somebody said to me, I had gone to a party. In fact, I hosted a party, and I left the party with all the guests in my house to go to get some drugs, because I ran out of drugs, to get some alcohol, and I didn't show back up to my own party until 9:00 that night. And two people were there, and one of them said to me, if you continue to do and live like this, you're gonna die. And something about my dying just didn't sound like that was supposed to be my life. You know what I'm saying? It just didn't sound like I was supposed to die at an early age. And so when I decided to go into rehab, my decision wasn't based on I want to be sober. My decision was, I don't want to die, and I want to learn how to continue to drink. If that doesn't sound crazy, I want to drink, but put the martini glass down. Right. And so an intervention was done. I actually detoxed myself in my own apartment, because at that time, I didn't know that's what it was. But when I went for the intervention, the counselor said to at that time, my boyfriend, who would later become my husband, Bishop Brookns, if she wants to drink, let her drink until we can get her a bed. Well, I just thought that was ludicrous. And I thought he was trying to, didn't want me to be sober. So I just said, forget it. I'm going to stop drinking on my own. I would not advise that today, Dr. Thema, because it's dangerous. But when I got to rehab, there was a lady, and her name was Joan, who helped me to see that I really did have a major problem. And I think the first part of any form of recovery is admitting that there's a problem, and not to be in a state of denial. To live and set a glass down for me was in a state of denial. And so I had to admit that I was an alcoholic, and and with that comes a lot of negative behaviors and a lot of negative connotations. But I was supposed to only be in rehab for 30 days. I ended up being there 120 days because the denial was so deeply rooted, and so to answer your question, it was not my own doing that I went into rehab. It was because other people's lives were being affected by my behavior. But that's not what kept me sober. What kept me sober for 30 plus years is that I had to decide, one, I needed to take responsibility for my own life. While I've had some horrible things to happen, I could not continue to let those things govern how the rest of my story would be written. And so I had to decide to rewrite the story. And it could be a part of the story because it happened and it's true and it's real and it's ugly and it was painful. But I had to say, I didn't want my life to end there. I wanted my life to end somewhere else. And in doing so, I learned how to affirm my own greatness, how to say that I was brilliant unapologetically. I mean, today, because I am sober, today, Dr. Thema, I have every degree that you can go for, an AA, a BA, a MA, a MDiv, and it was because, in fact, I have a double master's. And it was because I had women around me and people around me that believed in me and believed in my ability to accomplish that which I had been called to do. And while those are great tools, the greatest tool and the greatest gift I think that I gave myself and would like to give those of you who are on this, listening to this podcast, is to know that you're brilliant and to know, I had to know that I was brilliant, Dr. Thema, know that I was worthy of a healthy life and healthy environments and creating that environment, not only for myself, but for the people who had invested in me.
And you mentioned earlier the word accountability. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Let me say, first and foremost, alcoholism is a disease. And like any other disease, you have to create a healthy environment to keep you healthy, to keep you safe, to keep you thriving, that would allow you to thrive. And so in recovery, one of the things they say is one drink is not enough and 1,000 is too many. So what does that mean when we talk about accountability partners? Is that you already know that it's a disease. I already know it's a disease. I know when I pick up that first glass or pick up that first pipe or snort that first line, that's gonna start the roller coaster ride. So having an accountability partner, what does that look like? That means I have a sponsor that I can call when in times like these. I have people that I will call and check in with, and I don't have to say I'm in trouble. I just call and say, for me, I use the terminology, a coin phrase that a friend of mine, Lori Beeson, used. Can you just jump in the fight with me? And I say that to you as well, Dr. Thema, when I'm in a place that's not very safe or healthy, I'll call and say, look, jump in the fight for me. Can you jump in? That's an accountability partner. That's someone who's not going to allow you to wallow in self-pity. It's somebody who's going to call you on your mess. You don't want anybody in your circle that's a yes person, because yes people will lead you down a dark path, and it spirals out of control. So
and just to clarify for them, a yes person is someone who always agrees with you or doesn't address the issue.
Both. I mean, if someone who always agreeing with you, that means they don't have the capacity to speak truth to power. And not that they don't want to, it's just that they are not able to at that given time, right? And so, because for whatever the reason is, they have put themselves, or put you rather, or put myself in a position where they don't feel comfortable saying you don't need to do this, right? So they're wonderful people. They just can't be accountability partners, and that means you have somebody in your circle who's connected to you, who's going to see your bad behavior and address it right then, right there. At that, during that time, we have a saying in the room, and when I say room, I mean AA rooms, NA rooms, CA rooms. That you got to stop the stinking thinking. So accountability partners will help us to not go down that path of negative thinking, gloom and doom. In times like these, it's easy for anyone who has an addictive personality we know that it's dangerous for you to isolate, right? It's dangerous for you to be by yourself, because it's times like these you'll find yourself depressed. So for me, what I've done, Dr. Thema, is I've created an environment for myself, a healthy environment that allows me to stay focused on where I am. It allows me to celebrate my greatness. It allows me to choose which way I plan to go for that day. And may I just say what I've done thus far? So you talked about accountability partners. That means having a sponsor. That also means having a therapist. I have a therapist. I used to see her every 2 weeks. Now that I'm in isolation, we're quarantined, I see her every week. Every week I'm going to talk about something that's going to keep me focused, because she's going to help me stay focused. I also do a lot of reading. I do a lot of journaling. I exercise online. I never thought, Dr. Thema, I was never a big proponent of exercising, even though I knew it was healthy. But I never even thought I would be online to exercise. And now that's what I'm doing. But let me also say, in my house right now, I have candles lit. I have my blinds open. I have my diffuser going. And I try to stay away from the news as much as possible. And I listen while I love music, and I dance all the time with myself, because I'm single and I'm home by myself. There's one genre of music that I would not listen to. I do not listen to in this season, and that's blues. Because it takes you down that path. So those are some of the things that I've done to create an environment of healthy living.
Yes, those are wonderful. And I love that it's holistic, looking at our eating, our exercise, therapy, accountability partners. I'm glad you mentioned the online component, because as people are doing social distancing, a lot of mental health professionals are only doing teletherapy. And so for you all to know, you don't have to wait until after the virus to find a therapist. You can look for those who are offering services online and dealing with the holistic. And I know that a big part of your foundation is also faith. What has been the role of your faith or spirituality in your recovery?
Let me say that for me, my faith is built on who God is in my life. I
Mhm.
wholeheartedly believe that with God, all things are possible. But let me say that not every person who's attempting to be sober will identify their higher power as God. And
Mhm.
so, or as Lord or as Savior. So
Mhm.
whatever your your higher power, however you identify with your higher power, I would say that it's important that you set a routine with whether it's meditation, if it's reading, whatever it is, so that you can stay focused. For me, it is reading my scriptures daily. It is praying. It is doing meditation. So it's a combination of things that I do as a pastor and a preacher, but also as a believer in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior.
Oh, that is so important. And I appreciate you explaining both your journey and how that may apply in different people's lives. I am really intentional in this season about all of us now being trauma survivors as we look at the coronavirus and the pandemic that we are facing globally. That many of us are under stress, and not just everyday stress, but traumatic stress. And I know during
Yes.
these seasons, we can often turn to things or people for relief. So we want to be mindful and intentional about turning to things that will actually nourish us, things that will actually improve our health, things that
Yes.
will give authentic relief so that we can come home to ourselves, not the temporary home of addiction. And so, thank you so much. And I know some people will want to be in touch with you after this. And so, can you share on Facebook or Twitter how they may be able to find you?
Sure. Let me just say again, thank you, Dr. Thema Bryan, for this invitation. But if anyone wants to get in touch with me, they can do so just by looking up my name, Rosalynn Brookins, and it's Rosalynn Brookins, Brookins, on both Facebook and Twitter.
Oh, thank you so much. And so, all of you who are listening now, I want you to know that my heart is going to you, and that at this very moment, I invite your soul to tell your heart, mind, body, and spirit, welcome home.